So, there was this political debate recently that didn't just go viral, it completely blew up. It really felt like it hit a raw nerve in American politics. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what happened in that room, why it grabbed the attention of millions, and what it tells us about the ideas really shaping the country right now.
And right in the middle of it all is veteran commentator Sam Seder. I mean, this guy has been doing this for over 2 decades, and even he was just floored. He walked in expecting one kind of conversation and got something completely different. And what he heard is exactly what we're going to unpack.
The impact was, well, immediate. The full debate pulled in over 1.2 million views in just the first 24 hours.
But get this, a single clip from the debate went on to rack up more than 11 million views on social media. This wasn't just another debate, it became a genuine cultural moment.
So, the big question is, what on earth happened in that room? We're going to peel back all the layers of rhetoric, round by round, to really get at what made this confrontation so shocking and so captivating.
All right, so the Seder shock. Here's the deal. The shock for Seder really came down to the huge gap between what he expected and what actually happened. He showed up ready to talk about the economy, inflation, maybe crime. Instead, he got straight-up declarations of support for a theocracy and a nationalism defined by race.
Okay, let's break this down. Round 1, the falsehood. And the first major exchange didn't kick off with some big philosophical argument. Nope. It started with a very specific and, as we'll see, a completely false claim about diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
The exchange itself was pretty simple. On one side, a debater says with total confidence that DEI gives tax breaks to government agencies. Seder's response is just perfect. He calmly points out the basic flaw. Wait a minute, government agencies don't pay taxes. And then he just dismantles it by asking for a single example, just one.
And what we're seeing here is a classic rhetorical move. We can call it a confident false assertion. The idea is pretty simple. You just say something that sounds sort of plausible with enough conviction, and that confidence itself becomes the evidence, especially for an audience that wants it to be true. This quote from former evangelical Bradley Onishi just nails it. He explains that in some circles, it doesn't matter if a claim is factually correct. What matters is that it feels true, and that it confirms a belief you already hold.
Okay, so after that exchange over a policy detail, things escalated. And they escalated fast. The whole debate pivoted from the nitty-gritty of policy to a much more fundamental argument about what America should even be.
And then, bam, someone just comes right out and says it. I am a Christian theocrat. The argument is that a society living out Christian values is a great society. But watch how Seder tests this. He doesn't debate the abstract idea. He makes it personal and practical. My wife is Jewish. What happens to her in your system? And the killer question, which version of Christianity gets to call the shots? He just exposes the logistical nightmare behind the slogan. This forces another rhetorical pivot, something you could call a retreat to values. When the specific, unworkable details of a theocracy become too hard to defend, the debater just falls back on a vaguer, softer claim about values. It's not the same argument, but it's a really effective escape hatch.
And this is where it gets deeply ironic. According to actual Christian leaders like Amanda Tyler, this push for a Christian nationalist state is seen as the single biggest threat to religious liberty, including for Christians themselves. They argue a state-sponsored religion would inevitably control and corrupt the very faith it claims to protect.
So if you thought it couldn't get more intense, think again. The debate escalated even further. The argument for a Christian nation started to morph into an argument for a nation defined by a very specific racial and cultural identity.
Okay, this is it. This is the moment that went absolutely viral. A debater literally asks, what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism, and then defines American culture as being based on Christian European values and identity. And Seder, once again, uses specifics to just break the whole frame. He asks, what about the people who were here before Europeans? Are Native Americans part of this culture? And where do Black Christians fit into a European identity?
Historian Jem Artisby really clarifies the profound consequence of this way of thinking. This isn't just an abstract idea. It effectively erases the continent's original people from their own story, turning them into outsiders in the nation built on their land.
So everything we've seen so far, the false claim, the call for theocracy, the ethno-nationalism, it's all building up to this one final moment. This is the climax of the entire debate,
where Seder brings it all together and asks the one question that cuts through everything else. With this question, Seder put a human face on the whole ideological project. It stopped being an abstract debate about policy and became a direct, personal challenge. In the country you want to build, where do my family and I fit in? What happens to us?
And the response to that direct human question, the documented response was nothing. Absolute silence. No one on the other side of the room offered a reply.
But here's the thing. That silence doesn't mean there isn't an answer. Journalist Jane Mayer points to actual policy documents, like Project 2025. And in those documents, she says the answer is clear. People who don't fit the mold first become legally invisible, and then they become legally vulnerable.
And from that insider's perspective, broadly Onishi argues this silence wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was a deliberate strategy, because the honest answer is just too revealing, too radical, to state openly in a public forum.
So when you look at the gap between what was said out loud in that room and what's actually written down in these policy documents, you start to see the full picture. The debate basically unmasked a whole set of ideas by forcing them out into the open.
And what's revealed is this clear pattern. For each public-facing slogan, there's a specific, documented policy goal that's far more extreme. The term Christian values, for instance, isn't just about being a good neighbor. It maps onto a specific political theology aiming for institutional control. European and Christian identity maps onto a white nationalist framework. You can see how the mask works and what lies behind it.
And ultimately, as Jemar Tisby argues, this vision of America isn't a true historical account. It's a political fantasy. And it's a fantasy that can only work if you erase the actual history of the people who were here first, the people who are brought here in chains, and the millions of immigrants who helped build the nation.
And so, the entire viral confrontation, all 11 million views, all the shocking statements, all the clever rhetoric, it all boils down to this one final provocative question. It's the question that hung in the air unanswered in that room, and it's the question at the very heart of the American experiment today.